Hey there, courageous leader. Looking for a place to connect, share, and collaborate with other ambitious, impact driven powerhouses? Well, look no further. Join me and dozens of other bold, action oriented women in leadership in the Lead Hers Lounge. The Lead Hers Lounge is a no cost monthly meetup for listeners of the show and my broader She Leads community so that we can come together and uncover opportunities to collaborate with each other and magnify our impact. We meet monthly on the fourth Wednesday of every month. Details to save your spot for the next no-cost meetup is in the show notes below, or you can head over to SabineGideon.com/lounge to register. Again, that's SabineGideon.com/lounge to register and save your spot. I'll see you in the lounge. Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now podcast, where we help career and entrepreneurial women gain the tools to develop a success mindset, create winning strategies, build collaborative relationships, and take bold action towards creating impact and fulfillment in their lives and careers. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm on a mission to awaken and activate women and emerging leaders so they can tap into their innate leadership ability, elevate their influence, and create the impact they were destined to make. If you're ready to uplevel your confidence, courage, and influence, you've come to the right place. Join me weekly for insights, strategies, and resources to help you grow, develop, and embody the leader you are meant to be, so that you can make the impact you know you are called to make and establish the legacy you've always dreamed. The world eagerly awaits the emergence of your brilliance, impact, and influence. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the She Leads Now podcast. I am your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am so excited to share with you this conversation with Valrie Grant. Valrie is the founder and chairman of GeoTechVision, a knowledge services company she founded and built into an international, reliable, and quality provider of a range of customized services and data-driven solutions to governments, NGOs, and corporate entities. Oh my goodness, Valrie, I am so excited to have this conversation with you, to learn more about you and the amazing work that you are doing in the tech space and how you are leveraging your expertise to help young women on the come up. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm Valrie Grant, as you mentioned, and I normally start out by saying I'm Caribbean, and more specifically, I like to say I'm Jamaican. I grew up on the southwesternmost part of Jamaica, rural parish in Hanover. So I normally say I'm a country girl. But I am also someone who believes that geography should not dictate your destiny. And so part of what I do feeds into that. I believe that persons should have the opportunity to dream big and to really have the results that they want to have. Hence my wanting to work with kids and women entrepreneurs to really help them to see where their vision can take them.
Yes, I love that. And as a fellow islander on the other side in Haiti, I completely respect that and honor it, right? Our environments, our upbringing, right, don't necessarily dictate what we can achieve and what we can accomplish. And I love the fact that you've definitely made big headway and big shifts in such a technical, male-dominated industry, and globally you are a powerhouse. So tell us a little bit more about your career journey. What was that pathway for you to even get into this space where you are today?
It's amazing. I always tell persons that I got into Geospatial Technologies purely by accident, right? So I studied geology, and so I thought I would actually be a hydrogeologist. At one point, I thought maybe volcanology, but then all the books is in love and memory of when it comes to volcanoes. So I'm like, no, we're not doing that. But hydrogeology, I definitely thought that would have been my path. However, I guess life had other plans for me. And so I was offered a summer internship. And instead of it being an internship, it was that year between my undergraduate degree and a master's degree And so it ended up being a permanent job in the geospatial field. And I didn't think I would like geospatial because I didn't really like it at school. However, my employer at the time, every time I asked a question, he would keep giving me a book. And so I got deeper and deeper into the subject. And then I recognized that I started to really love it. And I ended up doing a master's in GIS and environment. And so that's a twist that my life took. And hence I've been there for the last 20 plus years.
For those who may be like me, where you're kind of like, oh my gosh, what is GIS? Because I know I certainly had that question for you when we first talked. If you wouldn't mind, like break it down for us.
The Geographic Information Systems. And it's really the modeling of the real world in a computer environment. So anything that has everything happens somewhere, right? And because everything happens somewhere, there is a location element to some of our most enduring problems. If it's disaster management, if it's allocations because of the COVID-19 crisis, we're all using maps to better understand what that is. And so that's what I do. I use the power of location and maps and associated technologies to answer big questions and give a holistic view.
Awesome. So you went from asking questions to getting a book to digging deeper into it and climbing up the corporate ladder. At what point, or what was the catalyst for you in your career that made you decide, wow, I would really love to start my own business or to start my own organization, leveraging the skills and the training that I received in corporate?
Okay, so I had been in government and I've also been in private. My journey was a little different from most because I started off in private sector and then I transitioned to government. And usually it's the other way around. And when I was in government, I recognized I could make a better impact being in government. So I've always wanted to make an impact. But then I recognized that there were some levels of bureaucracy and other things that just did not fit with my mindset. And so by virtue of that, I saw problems in the Caribbean that needed to be solved. And so I figured, why not create some kind of customized solutions to those problems? Because I found that many persons who operated in the region at the time, they were basically pushing boxes, as I like to say. So off-the-shelf solution, not necessarily customized to our needs. And so I figured it would be best if it was customized to our needs, where we went in, really understood the requirements, and then create a solution to match. And so it was with that mindset that I thought I could do better outside. And I didn't see an organization in the private sector that was operating like that in the region. So I figured, why not create one?
I love that. And you didn't just stop in the region, like you're global at this point. So talk to us about how you made that happen or what you did specifically to expand and to scale your business like that.
Okay, so I believe that you should always dream big, right? And so in so doing, I also looked for where the opportunities were and be prepared for those opportunities. And that also meant having a voluntary spirit. And so there were committees and other things that I would volunteer for that opened up the door. I also recognized that globally, geospatial was on the rise. And there were also few women in those positions. And so I became the voice of the Caribbean advocating, often in places where two women dare to sit. And so that opened up other doors. And it also made me recognize that there was a whole new world out there in terms of other places that could benefit from our expertise, whether it be South-South Cooperation, as far as the Pacific or in Africa or elsewhere. And certainly we would have expanded to having an office here in the US. And so it was just a matter of looking at what those opportunities were and being prepared for it and being willing to go for it.
You're so humble because I know that could not have been an easy journey. And certainly when you are the only woman or one of the very few women, right? That comes with challenges. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us if there were any challenges or if there was one challenge or setback that perhaps you had in your career or during that process of pioneering and paving that path, and how you were able to overcome it and not let it get you down or derail you.
There have been several different challenges. In fact, just at the beginning of building GeoTechVision, one major challenge was the fact that I became ill. And being ill meant that a lot of what I had in terms of financial resources that was set to grow the company had to be diverted to medical expenses. And given that, it meant that I had to take a step back and grow a lot more organically. So that was a major challenge. Along the way, we have also had other financial challenges because, it's one thing. We've had a situation where we've had a contract worth close to $2 million and just would not get the financial aid from financial institutions to be able to fund that contract. And oftentimes that's because this is a male-dominated field, and maybe they don't take a woman sitting in front of them that seriously. So we've had those things, and I've had to navigate and have had to try to overcome these different challenges. And just in terms of even getting our first set of contracts, there were challenges because oftentimes some of these things are sole source. They understand who it is that they're already giving it to. But I also recognize that when we got the first few, then it was a matter of referral, or work spoke for itself. And so we had to put in 150% to get through the door. But once persons started to recognize the value that we brought, then, we word of mouth, and we became much more known for the quality that we delivered.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that that's the story oftentimes, right? And not necessarily based on just women, but sometimes when you're new into a space, there is that period of time of proving yourself and demonstrating that you have the skills and the expertise to be able to dominate in that space, which you clearly have been doing. I'm curious, though, how much of a role, if any, has networking or building your network and building connections played into you being able to gain access into new places or gaining those contracts?
Yeah, networking has definitely played a role. One of the things that I said earlier is the power of being able to volunteer in different situations. And I found that opened up the door to additional networks. And I have gotten contracts from as far as Europe simply because I was the name that they saw in different committees and other places. And so because of that, it both lends credibility to what it is you're doing because of your network and because of the associations that you have, as well as oftentimes you may hear about an opportunity sooner than someone else. So there is definitely power to networking, and it goes the other way as well. It's about being able to open doors for others, because I always believe in paying it forward and making sure that we leave no one behind. It's an uncomfortable feeling to be the only person, the only Black woman on a board of 23 where we're seeing all gray suits. And so I want others to be there. So what can I do to make sure that there are others there, and soon?
I love that. Now, that's a perfect segue into, the next question here in terms of the work that you're doing to mentor other young women who are coming in the space. As you think about the path that you had to literally trailblaze for you to be able to now pay it forward and help those who are on the come up, looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently in your career or throughout your journey that you think would have helped you either get to where you are quicker or allowed you to accelerate?
I think about that question, and I think there's so many things maybe that I could have done differently. But as I think about it, I think that has formed into who I am today. Those experiences, it has made me Valrie Grant. The challenges and all, it has made me look at life very differently. It has also put perspective on certain things. And so I probably would not change it because I think there would be a very different outcome. So from that perspective, I do not look back to say, oh, if I'd done this differently, but I try to learn from those lessons. And I'm a person who thinks of every day as day one. And so from that perspective, I take all of the lessons with me and see how I can package them to make the next time better. And so that's what I've been focused on doing.
One of the things that you said in the beginning was, you saw a gap. There just wasn't anyone there. And you stepped up and said, wait a minute, I can do this better, or at least I can try to work on this, which is the innate leadership ability coming out. And so I often share that leadership isn't tied to a role. It isn't tied to a position. It is something that we uniquely have within each and every one of us. When time and space collide and we see the thing, right, that we are purposed to have influence over, to dominate, that's when our leadership skills kick in. So for young women who are, coming into their awareness of their leadership ability, I usually call them emerging leaders. I know that sometimes that's used in the sense of like they're just young, but sometimes you could be 50 and be an emerging leader, right? You're coming into that awareness. What advice would you give to them in terms of stepping out, especially when you haven't seen it modeled before and you just have that vision and it's better? Like, what advice would you give for them to, one, have the courage to move forward, and then two, to keep pushing forward, even though no one appears to have paved a path for them?
So I'd say two things. One, do it afraid. Sometimes you just simply have to do it afraid. Have that courage to be bold, to do it afraid. And if you truly believe in it and you know that it can work, well, step out and do it and make persistence your superpower, because you're probably going to fail. You're probably going to hear no and all of those other things, but you have to persist if you truly believe that you can make that difference.
Oh, I love that. Make persistence your superpower. And that applies on so many different levels for sure. So that is wonderful advice. Now, years from now, decades from now, when you look back on your career and you look back on what you've done, what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I would definitely want them to say that because of me, we've managed to somewhat bridge that digital divide, especially in underserved communities. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that is very near and dear to me. It is a passion project. That's why EduTech Aid exists. It's to make sure that we all have that opportunity. I said it earlier today to a team member that, education is a fundamental human right. And it is because of this right that all other rights happens when we know how to. And so in this digital world, I believe that access to digital tools for education has to be a fundamental right. And so I'd want to be able to help move the needle in that regard to make sure that we can bridge the digital divide and have inequities removed.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing legacy. And especially in, countries who don't have the resources. So that is a powerful legacy to have. And certainly I'm sure individuals on your team are bought into that same legacy. So I can't wait to see that ripple effect moving forward. Shifting gears here. I know that learning, right, is fundamental for all leaders. And you've mentioned education being such an important and key component to anyone's success. So I'm curious, is there a book that you're reading now that you feel that would be helpful for the listeners as they're either looking to up-level their leadership skills or just being good human citizens?
So I've read so many books, but the one that I actually have and looking at across from me is actually written by a friend of mine. and it's called Think, Grow, Act, and it's by Hubert Edwards. And it has some powerful nuggets in there. And so it's something that I would say to persons, if they've not seen it, to definitely look at it. I recently completed one of my own, which is Every Day is Day One, maintaining the startup culture and mindset. And so that is something that I believe people can benefit from if they have not heard about the Day One culture. That is something that has been popularized by Jeff Bezos. And so I have really expounded on what that is and how it can be applied to any organization, and how I have personally used it in GeoTechVision, how I've used that philosophy in my personal life as well.
Oh, I love it. We're going to include both of those links in the show notes below so that individuals can go ahead and grab that copy. Congratulations on your book. That is an amazing achievement. And it sounds like it's going to be helpful for people regardless of what field that they're in. So definitely looking forward to adding that to my Amazon, my long growing Amazon book list there. So thank you for that. Along those lines, learning is key for leaders in order for us to continue to grow and develop and show up as our best selves. Do you have a routine, maybe something that you do on a daily basis, weekly basis, that you feel is pivotal to you being able to show up as your best self and the best leader that you can?
Definitely. I believe in being prepared. And so because of I believe in being prepared, my day usually starts at about 4 a.m. Because that's when I'm able to think. That's when I have my quiet time. And so in that time, I do have some amount of production time, but I also have the space for my devotion, for making sure that I have my meditation, for reading my scriptures, and also for making sure that I have some time for self-care, that exercise, making sure that I start my day on the right path. And so that's a part of my routine. In terms of a weekly routine, I also, on a Sunday, I make sure that I plan for what's going to take place. So there's a point in time on my Sunday afternoon that I would plan ahead for the week. And I know what are the big things that I want to accomplish this week. And so those things go in the bucket. I also have a default diary on a daily basis that pretty much, these are the things that I'm going to be doing. So those are some of the things. And I would also say self-care. Everybody knows that I'm a wine person. So I'm going to be having a bath and having a glass of wine at some point during the week. And that's just part of what helps me to get through each week.
I absolutely love it. So many great points there, right? Making sure that you are starting your day off with whatever brings you peace, whatever fuels you, some exercise in there. And I love the fact that, you really take the time to plan out both daily and weekly, and you've communicated those times where you're not available so that you can actually focus and produce what you need to. And then the self-care, I think that's so important. I mean, it's unfortunate that in this day and age, it's had to take so much of a toll on people before they started incorporating it as a regular part of their routine. But I'm glad to hear when leaders are modeling that and they're incorporating it in their day-to-day as well, so that they can model it for their employees and their staff.
Yeah, and it's not always easy. I'll tell you that I've had network and girlfriends of mine who have helped me to get to this point where I know that self-care is important. There is one girlfriend of mine who she always says, so how are we doing with the self-care? And those things are constant reminders that we have to pay attention to that. And you know what? During this period of COVID, that is something that has definitely helped me to get through it, because it's been challenging. But knowing and maintaining a routine and also practicing self-care is important. And as you've rightly said, modeling it for your team is critical. So we have a morning meeting, and I've just transitioned into being just founded, not managing director. So I still pop onto the meeting as we transition. But in that morning meeting, one of the things that we do, and it's something that I learned from a coach many years ago, is we answer 4 questions. How are you feeling today? That's the first one we start with. And what did you do yesterday? Are you stuck? And if they're stuck, we take some time. We may take it offline because this is meant to be quick. And the next question is, what will you do better today? We've found that during this period of remote in COVID, it has helped everybody to be on the same page. But that first question also help us to know what frame persons are in. It has alerted me to when I need to have a one-on-one call. It has alerted me to so many different things.
Oh, that is so amazing. I'm curious because I remember at the peak of the pandemic, there was a lot of articles around, people saying, hey, I'm okay. And people just taking I'm okay at face value, or I'm doing fine, right? Like we got so used to answering that way. And there was a moment where it was just kind of like, no one's doing fine. No one's okay. We're in a pandemic. So being comfortable with digging a little deeper. Have you found that over time, your team has been a little bit more vulnerable when asked that question versus at the beginning? Or have they always been open to saying, actually, I'm struggling today, or actually, I prefer a mental health day? Like, have you noticed any shifts in how that question is responded to?
Yes, I mean, they were pretty open before, but I think the pandemic has taken a toll. And when they see their leaders being vulnerable, when they hear you say it's okay to not be okay, when you tell them that you struggled and they understand that and how you had to get over that, I find that they're more open to share with you. And so I found that persons are recognizing the value of mental health. They're recognizing that it's okay to not be okay and to seek the necessary help during this period. So yes, certainly there has been that shift.
I hope those who are listening are taking notes. If you don't already have something that is in place with your team when you meet with them, whether it's daily or weekly, and doing those check-ins. I think as the longer this pandemic extends, the more we need to humanize how we're interacting with each other. Yes, work needs to get done, but at the end of the day, we're human beings under extreme levels of stress over an extended period of time. So it is important to have those check-ins and then dig a little deeper. Be okay with being a little courageous. One thing, Valrie, that you said that stuck out for me is that it alerts you, like you're listening for those responses, and it alerts you as to when you need to reach out and have a one-on-one with someone and provide a little bit more support. And I think that that's what our leaders need to be doing now. And I know that leaders are taxed for their own selves in terms of the pandemic and running a business and everything else. But I also think that it's so critical and so important to be able to show that human side and support your team members in a capacity that's outside of the day-to-day work. So kudos to you for that.
Thanks. And I definitely think that finding other outlets, recognizing what each team member needs, whether it's some form of mentorship. Sometimes you're calling, but it's not to have a conversation about anything to do with business. It's a mentoring call. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're calling because you want to check to see where their headspace is at and what's going on in their world. And I've found that doing that allows me to see opportunities that they could fit into, see programs and continuing education opportunities or the support that would benefit different team members.
I absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much, Valrie, for sharing your experience and certainly how, you've navigated your own career and built this business and how you are continuing to lead in this time of turbulence, in this time of change, constant transition, and uncertainty. Before I let you go, though, I'm curious, are there any projects that you're working on, or is there anything that you have outside of the book, right? That's an amazing project all in itself that you'd like to share with the audience, and how can the audience connect with you on social media or through other means?
So one of the things that is coming up this quarter that I am hoping that your audience would be able to participate in is that we're going to have a race for education. And so it's going to be a virtual run, and the proceeds from that will be geared at getting digital devices to kids who do not have. And that's kids in the Caribbean, kids in the US, kids in any underserved community that we have a presence. And so that's what we'll be doing. And so more details on that will be coming, but they can definitely check it at edutechaid.org. And so that information will be there. Certainly, they can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Valrie Grant. And also on Twitter, on IG, all of the social channels.
Awesome. And yes, please do connect with Valrie on all of the channels. We'll have her handles in the show notes, and let her know that you heard her on the She Leads Now podcast. Valrie does respond to messages. I am living proof of that. So please do connect. I mean, she is a wealth of wisdom, of knowledge, and I'm sure you heard her passion for really helping to support the growth and development of others. So certainly reach out. And even if you're just a little bit more curious about the work that she does in this environment, or know someone who might be, definitely reach out and connect and learn more. Well, Valrie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you for those who are listening and those who are watching. We will be back again next week with another episode of the She Leads Now podcast. Until then, have a wonderful and fabulous week.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. Be sure to join us next week for another transformative discussion to help you grow, develop, and embody the courageous leader you've always been. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get alerts when new episodes drop, and join us for our next Leaders Lounge meetup on Zoom. Details and dates for future sessions are included in the show notes below, so take a look there or head over to SabineGideon.com/lounge to register and hold your spot for the next session. Again, that's SabineGideon.com/lounge to grab your spot. Excited to connect with you all inside the lounge. Talk to you soon.